wants to play, because typically people used to ban counters to whatever specific comp they wanted. Now I feel like it's a little bit all over the place.
I think like for this draft, for example, the red side bans are just really standard OP champions. So I don't really think you can gain that much from Splyce bans.
They're gonna do it.
Yes.
I told you they're gonna do it.
That's setting up for the hyper comp.
What does that set up for exactly?
That sets up, we've seen Braum paired with the Graves before. We've seen all sorts of carries out of the jungle. The Kaisa that Fnatic's been using is definitely an option. This is the chance for PerkZ to play something crazy.
I'm telling you guys, PerkZ sitting backstage, seeing Caps getting all the glory from that last game, and he wants it badly. It can still go bot lane. Braum is a flex. You don't have to put him in this mid lane setup.
So it's also important here, I think, because Ornn is up in the draft, and you're first picking Braum, which is also good against Ornn. And I think Ornn almost needs to be taken away on red side.
And that is exactly what Splyce will do as they are hovering the next pick. Possibly jungle. We'll see. As said, they didn't go for anything too crazy. But if you suspect that this is what's coming out from G2 Esports, is there anything you can do in the draft to negate it?
Yes, early pressure, early aggression. Winning lanes, I think, is a big deal in side lanes, because when you run the hyper carry funnel, the gold strategy, you can't gank those side lanes. So if you get winning top, winning bottom, you can try to generate a lead and close out early.
Also, I think Braum is just a normal pick. Like, they're not guaranteed.
That's possible.
Still
Certainly
in
possible.
this comp, yeah.
We're going down the rabbit
It's just
hole
seeing as
now.
you first pick the Braum, but here's of course the Hjärnan. Oh, there it is!
Okay.
Oh,
Let's go.
It's so obvious.
The Fisher just stood up and gestured at the Heimerdinger and the Kaisa. So to break it down, what
It's
do we
mainly
see
the
so
Kaisa
far?
I'm doing
The
it.
Kaisa.
So I also think Nocturne is a really good pick against the hyper carry comp in particular, because Nocturne is good at deleting one target and does an insane amount of damage. So maybe this Kaisa gets really, really far ahead with farm, but then Nocturne just goes in and they full dive and one-shot him.
One thing I want to see with Nocturne as well, ooh, Syndra coming in. I also think like one thing about the goal funnel strategy is if you have someone who's really good at early skirmishes around mid lane, like a Syndra, especially at level 6, if you get 1 or 2 kills like happened against Caps, you get the mid turret, you can really push them far back on the map, and as long as you don't give up a 21-minute Baron, then you typically end up getting the controls. I think the Syndra Nocturne combo, that is literally here to just one-shot PerkZ at level 6.
I'm not entirely sure how PerkZ can survive against Syndra Nocturne. They'll have to play really well.
Well, apparently, if you die 3 times in lane, it doesn't matter because you can still win the game. That's what we saw from Caps.
Fair enough.
Yeah, now I want to see Splyce ban away that Fiddlesticks, because G2 already have the Heimerdinger locked in.
Yep.
Splyce have one more ban to take away that champion that would just have insane pressure in the bot lane.
So let's take a look at what Splyce is building so far. As said, you need to be able to shut down that mid lane jungle combo, mid lane especially, and with the Syndra and the Nocturne, they are building out for that. What are they looking at next?
I think G2 just needs to build their comp out with a lot of peel, just to stop this Nocturne from killing their carry. Obviously, I would be saying this because we ran 4 supports in the last game.
Yes.
Janna, Karma, all that good stuff.
Maybe like, so Morgana is still open if they feel like the Black Shield is necessary. Janna, of course, is here if they want to try and disengage against
Fiddlesticks
the
is
Nocturne.
open, by the way.
But Fiddle Peel is really not the same. Like, it's gonna be
I
harder.
still think the fear has
The
like
fear
a
is
ton
good.
of value
That's
to
fair.
anti-dive.
That's fair. The fear can definitely be valuable for them. Also, like, if they do go Fiddle here, it just gives them a ton of bot lane control, so you actually have a lane that can pressure Splyce.
Right, the one concern though about drafting heavy pushing when you are running the hyper strategy is that you don't have the ability to support that side lane. The other team can try to gank it.
Well, the problem is if you're pushing, right, the side lane, and then Nocturne comes and ults you, it's usually you need to be careful because it's a 3v3, but now you know that there's no jungler, so it's going to be a 3v2, so you can just gank a lot more actively than you could otherwise.
And
Took the
Splyce.
Fiddle.
Oh, they actually take the Fiddle away
okay.
themselves, okay.
There we go. So at least that, so we'll see what then G2 Esports decides to go for. Maybe they throw us for a loop and put Braum in the bot lane. I don't think so.
I heard a lot about different pick supports against Fiddlesticks specifically because you can just kill him so easily. Blitzcrank Pike is already banned in this one here. Nautilus support, another one that potentially can be picked. Like, I don't think this is a troll hover by any means from G2. It actually could be viable.
Ooh, the Aatrox for
Aatrox.
Wunder.
Yeah, they have 2 really strong side lanes, G2, in this comp.
And that's a little bit of a concern too, because Splyce now don't have winning side lanes. You'd say we still don't know exactly what the bottom lane is going to be, but that was one of the sort of win conditions to play against a composition like the one G2 has drafted, and they're going to be losing those side lanes now.
So I wonder if Tom Kench is going to be the choice here to try and save Kaisa, but
Soraka.
not the case. Double range bot lane with Soraka Heimerdinger.
So I think when they lock in Soraka here, they really just want to win lane super, super hard. And they don't really care if Nocturne comes and tries to kill them. But I see, like, later in the game, it's going to be difficult because I don't think Soraka offers anything against Nocturne Syndra. I don't think she really offers protection, you know?
Yeah, that backline from G2 is going to die very, very quickly.
Exactly.
It's
And there we see the
And there's a
Ziggs
Ziggs ult
coming out.
on top of it.
We saw it already from Rocket, I believe, earlier. Can be absolutely destructive. With the Ziggs in the mix, what do you think of Splyce's comp up versus G2?
I would like to change my prediction.
To Splyce.
I currently have it on G2 eSports. I know I can't do it with the Twitter
You know
ones,
who voted
but
Splyce to win? This girl.
yeah, there you go. I think, like, I really think this gold funnel strategy is very, very difficult to execute, and I feel like Splyce have so many ways not only to try and punish the backline, but also when they get the advantage to go towards a Baron. If G2 wants to try and stop them, an Ornn ult into a Nocturne ult engage, like, I feel like there's too little peel on the side of G2 to make it the we can always come back even though we're down 7k
Dylan,
gold.
you agree?
I think there's just 5 diving and one-shotting champions on Splyce's team, and I don't think Kai'Sa can live. But if Kai'Sa gets far enough ahead, you can always 1v9 the game.
Yeah, looks like Peter Dunn came up with a good strategy versus G2 eSports. Will be a very important game. G2 got off to a great start, but nothing like a 2-0 to get you off to a wonderful one. Splyce, on the other hand, they will want to show that they have what it takes to win. If anything, we're in for an entertaining game once again, looking at these two compositions.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Sorry, I just left you hanging there for a second, but indeed, we'll see where it comes from. I want to see if PerkZ can do it. We said it already. He wants to show that he has what it takes
So
to do the same thing
predictable,
as
man.
Kev. You think he's really going to show it in his head? He wants to show us. Well, he's going to have to. We'll see exactly what happens. Wadid concentrated. Nisqy looking to put up a great performance. Let's see what happens, and let's send it over to QuickShot and Vedius.
Thank you very much, Sharks, Dylan, Falco, and the rest of the gang. We're jumping into what is a refreshing team composition.
Yep.
Of course, the Kai'Sa versus Syndra and the Heimerdinger Soraka versus Ziggs Fiddle is what we're going to expect. But Vedius, what I'm very excited about
Level 1.
is
Level 1.
shenanigans. All right, will Kobbe get caught? I mean, he's in a very good spot. Instantly sees G2 and decides to back away. And obviously nothing's going to come from that. We will have a very brief pause, as it looks to be the case for Wunder. All right, what do you think of the team comps? Obviously we didn't get to do picks and bans.
Nope. So, I appreciate what the analyst desk is saying. I think it makes a lot of sense. The amount of burst and dive potential onto the backline is very strong, comically strong even. And when you're relying a lot on PerkZ to be one of the big carries, naturally there's an element of risk. I think it's also important to recognize the clear distinctions between G2's funnel comp and Fnatic's. With Fnatic, they had multiple supports in order to entirely play around PerkZ.
Okay.
Sorry, to play around caps.
Around caps, mid lane.
Whereas for G2, they have a bit of a carry in the top lane in Aatrox. And they also have a winning pushing bot lane with the Heimerdinger and the Soraka. This means that they're not just conceding all the lanes and putting all of the eggs in one basket.
Okay.
It means that they're going to be dividing both mid farm and jungle farm to PerkZ, but also Hjärnan will be relevant in terms of the game. He will be able to output damage. All of the focus doesn't just rely on PerkZ getting ahead and being the sole carry. It's more about maximizing farm and gold onto a single carry while still having other damage sources elsewhere in the comp.
Having backup options.
Yes.
Plan Bs and Cs, potentially. And then I guess some pressure on Splyce to be proactive, to use the tools they have to burst, to engage, to jump on G2.
And the big difference here is, like, when you think about how easy it has been for teams to get early game leads against Fnatic's comp, it's because they often don't have pressure in the side lanes. This time around, G2 definitely will, and it should, in theory, be a lot harder to try and invade because you don't just have a naturally pushing bot lane. The top lane, Ornn, sure, he should have a bit of pressure up against the Aatrox, but he's not just guaranteed to win that lane and then help out his jungler. So invading becomes a little bit harder, setting up for those ganks becomes a little bit harder, and overall, you don't have that same kind of freedom to shut down the funnel that'll be going on to PerkZ.
All right, so let's see how good or how well G2 Esports can execute this. PerkZ is potentially chasing the record that was just set by Caps, 288 CS at 20 minutes. It is an all-time EU LCS record. The previous record holder was in fact Xerxe. Comes from a different time, a different patch, and arguably Xerxe's feat was even more impressive. But as it stands, all of the attention is going to be on the bottom lane. Hjärnan and Wadid going to need to run for their lives. Kasing's been able to keep them in place long enough. Wadid's already used barrier and the flash. Duskbringer goes out. The stun will not find a target. And Splyce unable to convert with the kill.
Very surprised that they would send Nisqy down here as well, because the whole point of having Nisqy on this Syndra is to keep pressure up and force these minion waves underneath the tower. He's now only level 2. Xerxe is only level 2, and PerkZ and Jankos should actually be in a position to try and contest the enemy jungle. And you can see they haven't decided to go for the invade. Instead, they've just put priority on that Scuttle Crab, and now already PerkZ is level 4. Very risky roam there from Nisqy that G2 have been able to benefit from a lot already.
Yeah, exactly. Keep our eyes on that level and CS difference. PerkZ level 4, 29-7. Nisqy level 2. You see PerkZ just picked up his red buff now, moving over to the Raptors. Oh man, this funnel is in full effect. G2 are in fact ahead in gold. And even that early advantage that the Ornn may have into the Aatrox, not showing dividends yet. We saw a trade going back and forth a moment or two ago, and Wunder's going to be pretty comfortable with that wave, pushing towards him and collapsing back.
Remember last game when we kind of checked in on the gold relatively early on, Caps had a 400 gold advantage over his lane counterpart, whereas the jungler was at a 400 gold disadvantage.
Deficit,
yeah. So it was kind of like balanced out, and now Xerxe, he's trying to claim some of this gold back as he looks for a dive up top.
Wunder has already used the flash. He used that Dark Flight a minute ago, but I think with Xerxe not actually connecting with that Duskbringer, decided against going in. Now, the first time we did have a pause, it was on G2 Wunder's side. It was a keyboard-related question which they resolved very quickly. And now, of course, the secondary pause does not look to be related. When I look over, I'll get an update for you as quickly as I can.
It does seem that Wadid just very quickly reconnecting, so I imagine that'll be resolved relatively quickly. Once we have more information, we'll update you. But so far, things going pretty well in terms of the very early game for G2. Again, very risky roam from the side of Splyce down towards the bot side. They want to try and get an early advantage so that they can start snowballing through bot, because if Ziggs and Fiddle are able to take this tower down towards the bot side of the map, they can start rotating them around, start utilizing that map pressure that they have. But as they weren't able to find that, more funneling goes into PerkZ. He's now level 5, 4 minutes into the game. 46 farm at 4 minutes. PerkZ now knows what it feels like to be like Uzi.
Oh, the sting on that sentence, actually. I do like it, though. Although, to be fair, Uzi did it in lane against another player.
Yeah, I mean, that was the more terrifying thing. But the concept still stands. I mean, maybe he was the man that gave birth to this. Well, if teams could put all that farm into one player.
Okay, Vedius, I'm going to now ask you to talk a little bit more about this funnel strat, but from the G2 perspective, because it is working well.
Yeah.
Something that I feel the funnel strat has not done well is win around the world. I think I've seen it lose significantly more than I have seen it win.
The Master Yi Tarek first debut in LCK is when I've seen it be the most successful, but I agree with you outside of that.
Yeah, but we've seen it, what, 10, 12, 14 times probably between LPL, EU, and here. Obviously, we did have a quick reconnect, unpause, repause. As I get more information, I will let you know. But let's keep the focus on G2 eSports for now. Let's talk a little bit about... They've got PerkZ to a good start. We're approaching 4.5 minutes. He's ahead in gold. The whole team is. They're playing well. Where do they go from here? I mean, eventually you run out of jungle camps to donate because this Kai'Sa, Braum are clearing very quickly.
Well, then they just sit in the middle lane. The whole goal, if you're just G2, is you basically go mid, you push out the wave, you then grab the Scuttle Crab, and that's your first priority. And if there's no Scuttle Crab, you grab jungle creeps. And the great thing about Kai'Sa and Braum is it can actually skirmish very effectively in the early game, largely because of the Braum passive and the damage that you'll have, and in theory the level advantage that you have, so you can actually start looking to invade as well. And that's something that we didn't see a lot from with regards to Fnatic's comp, because again, they did not have pressure on side lanes, and often they would draft things like the Nunu and the Tarek, which doesn't have the strongest early game dueling prowess, and also they would fall behind a little bit in the early game, so the enemy jungler wasn't even that far behind. This time around, Xerxe is only level 3, PerkZ is level 5. The moment he hits level 6, if they wanted to, they could look to contest an enemy red buff. They could look to try and steal away enemy camps, and they could look to be a little bit more proactive, simply because they have so many other laners that can help them out.
That makes perfect sense. What a world we live in when the Braum being played by the jungle player is invading the jungler of Nocturne, being played by an actual jungler. It's unique scenario to be in. It is a pause, ladies and gentlemen, that's related to the clients connecting and reconnecting. Unfortunately, just as we got Wadid back into the game, one of the players on the Splyce side had to do exactly the same thing. So while we continue to triage, I'm going to give you a brief update. G2 and Splyce, two of our longer running teams here in the EU LCS. Historically, G2 have had the better of Splyce. 20 wins to 7 is the difference. So over their all-time records, these two teams have faced off in many iterations with several players. And this time round, G2 are up. Look at that, 50 CS to 17. And of course, if we look at the gold, 600 up is PerkZ. Thank you for the support and the cheers here in Berlin. It is unfortunate to have the pause once again. Wadid and the rest of G2, in fact, having some fun with this one, Vedius.
At this point, I wonder if all of them just look to reconnect. But it does feel like Wadid, he's enjoying the chill. You know, his bot lane, he's already been forced to use all of his summoners. He is playing Soraka. In my mind, one of the least mechanically demanding champions in all of League of Legends.
Ooh.
I really don't like Soraka.
But you actually have to point at places to cast spells.
Oh, wow.
I'm just trying to think, least mechanical. I think Mundo could be less mechanically demanding. Because you only have one skill shot ability.
Yeah, but you've got to manage your own health, because remember, a lot of your own abilities cost health.
So does Soraka's, I suppose, but she also has spells to aim.
Okay, all right, I'm fine. Mundo is a worthy argument. Mundo is a worthy argument. Maybe my own bitterness towards the champion is being swayed in that regard. Soraka, as a champion as a whole, is solid. She makes sense in the current meta. I
just
understand
insulted
why
all of the players that play Soraka.
I mean, that happens a lot. We've insulted Yasuo players. We've insulted Fiddlestick players. You know, like, it happens. You got to accept it. Some champions are just annoying.
Okay, I can accept that. The people that play them are annoying too. That's what Vedius says and what he believes. While we do have an update, of course, once this game wraps up, guys, we will have our usual post-show, post-game lobby. Today, we're going to be asking some of the analysts a few of the questions from you guys. So jump onto Twitter, use the hashtag #PingTheLobby, and ask a few questions. I know that we will be talking about, obviously, the results from this week, the meta that we are seeing on 8.11. And of course, some of the ways it's going to be forward. I've got an update from our production team and from league officials. The players are currently experiencing disconnects. It's pretty important to play a game of LCS if you're not connected. Therefore, league officials are having all players disconnect from the game and reconnect to the game in sequence, and just making sure we go through all of the options, hopefully to prevent it happening again. So we apologize about the delay, and hopefully we'll get them back in here.
You definitely don't want to disconnect midway through a game.
It's pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult. Let's turn our attention to Splyce, Vedius. They jump back into this game in a few minutes. They've got a Kaisar that's being super powered up. It's going to hit the next rank of Super Saiyan at some point. How do they stop it?
Well,
nobody else has found an answer yet.
It's challenging, because so far the main strategies that we've seen in terms of shutting this down is either denying farm or matching push in the mid lane. And one of the strats they actually quite liked over in the LCK was they actually put something like a Lulu mid, who would kind of soak up some of the farm, but then you would have someone like a Nocturne join the Lulu, you would share experience, you would share some of the farm, you'd basically be there to push out as well, because you'd have a Lulu and a hyper-scaling or strong early game dueling jungler like Nocturne, Nocturne or Graves is another one. It allows you to actually contest things like the Scuttle Crab or maybe even a couple of the enemy Raptors, so that they can't just so freely walk into your jungle and just straight up steal your stuff. Yeah. So that's why I'm a little confused by the Syndra. Initially, I thought it was going to go to bot lane, and you would use it as a way to pick up turrets, throw them away. You have a pretty easy way to clear out the wave as well. But instead, they decided to put it mid, and I feel like that you can still challenge once you hit 6, but before that, you can't really fight for these early jungle camps. So that's why I'm curious to see how they make it work. Right now, they are at a bit of a deficit, and he's just soaking up as much farm as he can.
All right, just as an update, guys, all players are back into the game. We have resumed and been running it for several seconds. It appears as though a resolution has been found. And to reiterate the last 5 minutes, Splyce made an attempted roam gank down to the bottom lane for Hjärnan and Wadid. You can see that is why Wadid's summoner spells were on cooldown. It failed. faltered. And that is part of the reason why G2 have been uncontested in funneling this farm to PerkZ. Already up to 58. Gold is plus 700. The counter is Xerxe being 500 up over Jankos. Thank you, observers. You can see the gold values on the bottom of your screen.
Yep.
As Vedius, we jump back into lane, and I asked you when there's no jungle camps in the minimap, as you can see is the case. Well, then you send PerkZ and Jankos mid.
Yep, so the Rift Scuttler also just spawned on the top side of the map, so after they push out mid, they'll head up towards the river and be like, all right, we'll take this, thank you very much. Interestingly, Xerxe is moving into the river. Thought he might be looking for a few steals as we see a trade up top lane.
All right, Wunder's going for the proc on that Bloodthirst Price combination, but doesn't want to really win the rest of the fight. Is that matchup that you kind of expect to play out as is for the time being?
So typically when you look at Aatrox, his early game is not the strongest. He usually wants to complete the Tiamat once he has wave clear. That's when things get a lot better.
Goodbye, Wunder! But at what cost? Tower shots come down. Odoamne is now running for his life. Flashes over the wall, and it's secured by PerkZ. The worst possible opponent for G2 to secure it with.
The funny thing is, if he had just died to the tower, I believe it would have been Jankos that got the kill, and PerkZ wouldn't have even had an assist. But because he tries to get out of that situation, PerkZ ends up picking the kill, so it ends up being a 1-for-1 overall. Odoamne finding a solo kill will be great for the side of Splyce. Having that extra bit of pressure in the top side of the map is very valuable. And we got to recognize that Splyce are being able to push in with this 2v2 in the bot. Ziggs clearing out the turrets very effectively, pushing this wave very quickly underneath the tower, is enabling Splyce to generate pressure, at least on the side lanes.
All right, and of course you can see, in terms of generating pressure, G2 eSports on the invade. Jankos and PerkZ with that smite, level 7, still the highest in the game. Going to start off the Bramble back. There's no support or anyone around on the Splyce side. I can't see if Xerxe is going to get this Infernal uncontested. Got some support from Kobbe. So trading red buff for a red dragon, I think that's probably fair.
Look at top lane now, though.
All right, Killer Instinct is going to get fired. There we go. Here comes PerkZ. Not going to be able to kill just yet. But Jankos sends it home with a bite from Winter.
Surprise, Wunder didn't choose to tank the tower, given that he did have his passive up. Instead, the kill will go over to Jankos, and now Nisqy trying to answer back in the bot lane.
All right, Scat of the Week needs to find a stun. Hjärnan has got his flash available to him. Syndra has had a couple changes in recent patches. Get some additional bursts with more spheres on the ground. As it stands for now, it's just going to be the Tower First Blood. This in combination with Ziggs, and that W, Tower's going to drop very, very quickly.
So Splyce's answer to this strat is to just get this bot tower down as quickly as possible. We saw this from the level 2 roam of Nisqy and Xerxe towards the bottom lane. They'll push this wave in, go back to base, and then set their eyes up towards the top side of the map, or maybe even mid, depending on where they want to set up that pressure. We're going to have a look back at this replay before we get into the next couple of stats. You can see that Wunder does have his passive up. He decided that the farm was more important because he wanted to get the wave underneath the tower. So the fact that they still secure the kill is an advantage gain for G2. Odoamne loses a big wave. So overall, Splyce can be pretty happy, or G2 can be pretty happy with that trade.
Oh, but the question is the cost worth it? It was an Infernal Drake and a tower to Splyce.
Very true.
It complicates the matter. Look, on one side, Jankos and PerkZ are the guys that are starting to get ahead, starting to get... I'm not going to use the word fed, because Jankos has 10 CS. PerkZ is 110 at 8 minutes 43. But it is a difficult question to answer when you equate, the strats and how two of them want to play out.
I mean, I'm looking at this G2 lineup right now, and we talked a lot about this last game. Levels are what you've always got to consider, and gold differential is what you've got to consider, which we might not have time for as we see a play in the top side.
We will not. Odoamne is going to get caught by that Dark Flight. Blades of Torment thrown down. And there comes the Mega Inferno Bomb, but the Blood Wall passive is available for Wunder. He's going to get procced, and he's going to regen. Kasing Kobbe trying to do what they can to push under the tower, but it is G2 that get themselves a kill, and they defend the tower.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that it's these side laners that are picking up these kills, along with PerkZ moving off to a side lane, and Odo has just been shut down in multiple occasions. They tried to go for this dive, they felt they had the numbers advantage, they didn't read that Braum would not be with his carry, and they end up getting turned around. Like, they think this dive is pretty easy, they think they have the numbers advantage, and then with the chain CC that they have combined between them, they're able to find an easy kill, and then Ignite was even used in exchange for the passive. So overall, G2 are very happy with how this early game is going.
Oh, gigantic advantage for G2, and all right, there's going to be another counterplay here. Here comes the Crow Storm, jumps in, not going to be enough yet. Paranoia goes down, Golden from the stopwatch. The timing on that is so influential. Another proactive Splyce play that fizzles to nothing.
They're trying to kill this bot lane as much as possible. They want to try and gain as much map control and set up Kobbe and Kasing to just be this constant sieging duo. They avoid fighting the Kaisar. Their goal is just to continually take down these towers and play around objectives rather than look to fight. And they're doing it through finding these picks, throwing all these ultis down towards Hjärnan and Wadid, and trying to shut this bot lane down.
And it's so interesting, you know, Splyce, if you think back to the beginning of the spring split, Splyce started pretty weak, and they ramped up through, you know, weeks of play, eventually securing themselves third in Copenhagen in that third, fourth decider against Vitality. And the question that we had coming into this split is whether or not that impressive growth would help establish Splyce as a contender from the get-go. Lost their game yesterday, seeing multiple dives, multiple attempts, and plays being thwarted. And that's another shaky start to a split, you know. Splyce, yes, they're even at 11 minutes with G2, but it is against an extremely farmed Xerxe, super Xerxe, if you will. And it just makes me a little nervous, and I know how good G2 can be in the late game.
Yeah, because I keep bringing it up because I think it's relevant. I always look at these levels. PerkZ is now level 10 to the level 9 of Nisqy. He's going to keep getting farm, and he pretty much has a roughly 2-level advantage. Jankos is pretty much the same level as Xerxe. So even though Xerxe has more gold than Jankos, Jankos isn't going to be less relevant in team fights. And PerkZ is very strong, while the rest of the map for G2 is either even or ahead. So the overall map for G2 is looking very positive, and when you think about how these next two fights are going to play out, it's going to be very much about can Splyce successfully one-shot PerkZ in the fights. We heard from the analysts and said that they don't have enough peel to keep players like PerkZ, like the Heimerdinger, alive. Or will it be G2 finding those means of survival and winning out on these late game fights, as given that it's a Kaisar who's had all her farm directly funneled into her.
Now that is one of the things I do like for Splyce and their fans, is it's not a traditional funnel comp. There's not a lot of shields and heals and stand supports. Yes, of course, Soraka's there, but it's not the 3 supports, like 3-4 supports that we've seen in previous games. We'll see whether or not G2 can keep Kaisar and PerkZ alive. One of the tools they did pick up, also with PerkZ, was that Rift Herald. We've seen some Rift Herald changes in recent patches as well. Huge damage on the boop when it hits a tower. And of course, increased damage when you poke her in the eye.
Yeah, and it's eye increased damage to 40% of maximum health, or a flat 1500, depending on whatever is more. So if you keep it alive, it just does more damage, but it's also easier to kill, because when you hit the eye, it obviously takes a lot more damage itself. So it can be used more often these days to take 2 towers rather than just 1, but the setup needs to be there.
Right, well, we'll find out where the setup is. For the time being, it's Splyce shoving down the mid lane. They have the only tower kill of the game. It was down in the bottom lane. It is a Ziggs Fiddle lane. I don't really care what you play into that. They got a lot of lane pushing power.
They do.
And tower killing power. So I'm willing to accept that Splyce will get the tower advantage early.
And you've got to be really careful if you're PerkZ now, because you don't have the safety of a tower, so when you try to push out mid-wave and catch all that farm, the risk of Xerxe ulting onto you, Kobbe throwing that ulti out as well, the long-range engage of Odo, all these things become a little bit scarier, so there's a little bit more respect that has to be shown to the composition of Splyce.
Right, and of course, talking about respect, 2 Luden's Echoes picked up, first item power spikes coming across the board, Frozen Heart there for Odoamne, so starting to scale up. It feels like, you know, those first item spikes, I always get the feeling teams are a bit more willing to throw everything in the ring, you know, go for those fights with 2 towers down as well. There's even more opportunities potentially for Splyce to try push around the vision, try to get into different places. I just have to keep tracking the CS, by the way, because PerkZ is just there in the mid lane now, roaming top. Is sitting on 214 at 14 minutes. Gonna look for the engage, and we need to see for the plasma to connect. There's one tag, gonna come down in a moment or two. There is PerkZ running in with the supercharge, jumps in with a killer instinct. You can see that coming minutes away, so it's very difficult to hype it up.
Yep.
When G2 just punished Splyce for being a little overextended.
But we got to keep track of what's going on across the map because Odoamne pushed in bot, Nisqy's pushing in mid, while the 5-man unit of G2 are just collectively grouping top. We talked about how now the Rift Tower just does more damage to towers, and when you protect it, you can very easily take 2 turrets. Well, that's exactly what G2 just did. And in terms of overall map control, they've equalized the goals. PerkZ is still extremely strong, level 13 now, and we talked about it last game. Level 16, 2 items is really when you can start to be a carry, and it doesn't even take that long to get it because of all the resources that you're funneling in. It was around like 22, 23 minutes when caps hit that point, and that is the point at which G2 is working towards.
All right, so there was the Rift Herald that was summoned. Obviously, Kasing just gets run down.
Yep.
And Vedius. In the previous game, I said to you, what was the point when she's unkillable? Now, is that still true? This game, without the Karma and the Morgana, is the Soraka Braum enough? Plus level 16 and 2 items, or would you give him a little more time?
So, if I was the Nocturne in this situation, I'd feel really uncomfortable just immediately diving onto the Kaisar because, number one, you know where Nocturne's going to land, right? You can't predict which target he's going to go onto. That's always obviously the challenging point. But the moment you see him coming towards your carry, you drop the silence on top of your carry. That means that he is now locked in place because he's been silenced. And there's a huge risk of him getting rooted, and you can just shut him down because of how squishy he is. On top of that, Braum is still a good peeling champion. And as long as G2 don't use that as an engage tool, more of a counter-engage tool, then G2, I believe, should still be in a pretty favorable position to be able to win a lot of these fights. And remember, yes, sure, even if you do kill PerkZ, Hjärnan is not behind on farm. He is even with Kobbe. Wunder is still in a great position as well. So I look at these fights and I feel like G2 is the stronger, but we'll see how things play out.
Take a look at that. PerkZ fancies himself a shot at Kobbe. Mega Inferno Bomb comes down to try clear out the wave. It's an upgrade on that H28G Evo turret. He'll be firing that one down. Not enough
Flank
to take
TP.
out the
Here we
tower.
go.
But here comes Ornn. The horn is loud, and knocks away G2 eSports. Close Storm comes down and Splyce as they're calling. They've locked themselves Xerxe, but a 3-man stun from Scout of the Week. Jankos is doing what he can with that Unbreakable, but Nisqy with a flash forward closes it out. Ends up being a 1-for-2 in favor of Splyce.
And this is the damage potential of Splyce when you have an optimal setup. Odoamne comes in with such a good flank, and while Splyce don't find a lot of kills, they get a lot of summoner spells out, and they still come out advantageous in the ensuing fight. I think that was the best case scenario for Splyce, and the way they executed their composition is exactly what they need to be doing.
Oh, it's going to be so interesting how the team fights play out. If Splyce can find those fights again and again, here's a replay of it once more.
So it all starts off with G2 trying to siege up onto the turret, and remember, Hjärnan does not have his ultimate available, neither does the Kaisar, so this is the best time to do it. The darkness comes in, Splyce want to group up, but you're grouping up against a Ziggs and a Fiddlesticks, and they're both pretty squishy. The return damage from Hjärnan was actually pretty significant, but at the end of the day, they took too much burst damage from the Syndra and the Nocturne initially, and then Splyce ended up coming out ahead. But you can also see how squishy this Nocturne really is when he gets into the middle of the fight, and that's the thing that you do have to be very careful of. But as we saw, Ziggs and Syndra, very heavy in the damage, and Heimerdinger, whenever you run into him, you have to respect his output as well.
It's insane, actually, seeing just how much burst these Heimers have been getting out. The upgraded rockets to just obliterate anybody in
And he
their
didn't even
face.
have his upgrade.
Nope.
That's the important thing.
He used
to
it
know.
on the tower earlier.
Exactly.
But also, you know, one of the utility factors of that bouncing on the E when you upgrade the grenade, I love the idea of a Braum and a Heimer on the defense. Because you cannot get through the Braum ulti and those grenades. The amount of zoning and peel that you've already talked about, just going to give PerkZ Wunder all the time in the world that they need. But look, it's an even game. We're coming to 20 minutes. 2 towers to 3. Gold is bang on even. Splyce have got an advantage in the Dragon front. Again, it's going to be up to Splyce to try and find some opportunities to shut down PerkZ.
Level 14, Rage Blade completed, 285 farm and 19 minutes. G2 is getting to that sweet spot where they're going to be very terrifying to play against in fights, and a lot of it is going to come down to execution for both these teams. Splyce, we've already talked so much about how they want to play this and how they just want to one-shot PerkZ. It's obviously easier said than done.
Yes.
And how they set that up, how they look to play that fight is going to be the thing to keep your eyes out for.
It really will be. It's 25 seconds left on the counter, and PerkZ has already broken the CS record that was set by Caps a minute or two ago. when Deficio talks about this funneling strat, and he specifically talks about PerkZ watching it, Deficio adds this air of PerkZ wants to do it. PerkZ wants to prove he can do it better with G2. And has already done so. Over 300 CS before 20 minutes. Rageblade, QSS, got the stopwatch and the Blood Razor. In actual fact, just picked up a pickaxe as well. My word. This is a scary Kai'Sa.
Yep, it's the level 16 mark where she really gets scary. And Nisqy, the funny thing is Nisqy's level 13, and that's like a normal level to be at. 200 farm at 20 minutes. Nisqy still played very well this game. You know, ever since his return now to the Summer Split, he's been having a very solid performance, and he will be one of the big determining factors in being able to one-shot PerkZ, because he now has 2 items finished. His ulti is a big damage dealer, and that alongside the Duskblade from Nocturne and the ulti from Kobbe, there is the ability to one-shot.
Oh, yes. There is, and then it's just up to Jankos and Wadid to try counterplay. As you mentioned, you've alluded to it before, you know, the Equinox, the ability to put the heals down. Look at this Kasing with the insta-fear. QSS comes out. PerkZ is not going to find his target, but he will get Kasing's flash. This means there's no one to defend the mid-outer turret. G2 eSports will extend their gold lead and continue to apply pressure.
Now the Baron is up and available with the priority that has been gained from G2. They'll likely look to move up through the river and regain some of this vision. Splyce will then look to answer and reclaim some of the vision their own, but because G2 have already back to base, after they've cleared all this out, they will be able to reset, and they will be in a better position for the Baron over the next couple of minutes. And this is where we start to see this Baron dance, the back and forth, where G2 and Splyce will look to contest around this big objective. And again, keep your eyes on that sweet spot. The level 16 for PerkZ is really when G2 are going to be feeling confident enough to go for a fight.
Oh, it's not going to take very long. PerkZ is so close. And you can already see, by the way, like G2 leaning into that Baron side of the map.
They're going.
Okay, so actually they're just going to go straight into Baron Pit. Got themselves the control ward. They denied the vision. As long as that is not killed, Splyce won't have any idea. Even if Kasing puts a ward down, it gives him a brief, momentary glimpse. And it is cancelled. Teleport being channeled by Odoamne. He's got his ultimate available. Smites are up in the pit. Baron will be secured in a moment. It's picked up by PerkZ on the way out. G2 even picked themselves up a scuttle crab, and Xerxe's paranoia does nothing. Turn the lights out, go to bed, Splyce, because you might just be sleeping with the fishes tonight.
And G2 do exactly what Fnatic do. They walk up towards the Baron, they gain the vision control. Splyce do not respect the lack of vision and the speed at which G2 can take this, and they have no answer. Baron goes down to G2. They're now the ones primed and ready to start attacking this Splyce squad.
And such good control from G2, because it wasn't easy to get to this point. Splyce had thrown multiple attempts to disrupt it. Multiple roams, multiple ganks, multiple dives. But G2 just had their finger on the pulse. They knew where and when and what Splyce were doing, and always had an appropriate response.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Hjärnan and Wadid did a great job of tanking a lot of the ganks that went their way. The fact that even though G2 ended up losing both bot and mid tower, they were still able to keep the gold even and maintain pressure, and now they're the ones that can look to play on the offensive. You have Wunder sitting up at the top lane. He has no TP, so he'll push that out and then look to group mid. G2 will look to do the same, where they basically regain priority mid and then play towards bot, and with this Baron buff, they're just going to continue this siege. But Splyce are just going to try and avoid a fight, I think, right now. The problem is, you kind of need the fight, you need to one-shot PerkZ, but even then, it's all about this insurance as well. Like, 2 items have been finished for Wunder. This is the item spike for Aatrox. 2 items are finished for Hjärnan, and he is no slouch either. So it's not like the rest of this G2 squad is weak. It's just that G2 have a very strong Kai'Sa, and Splyce need to find a way in order to win these fights, which is going to be very challenging to do.
Yeah, and especially when you look at the vision. Keep your eyes on the minimap. Look at the wards that are just littered. Splyce is part of the jungle. Zoom out from the observers, really highlighting how much information G2 have to work with. Remember, the top tower, the top lane towers rather, they were pushed in many minutes ago. There's nothing left to play for. Last outer turret outside of Splyce's base is in the mid lane, and you know, we're getting close to today's average game time, Vedius. The 4 previous games clocked in an average of 25 minutes and 53 seconds. If I add yesterday's average of roughly 31, we have a weekly average thus far of 28 minutes.
It's pretty fast games.
Week 1 of spring, just week 1, was a 42-minute average game time. That is
Are you implying that the game got faster, Trevor?
significantly. In fact, I'm not implying it. It's a fact. The numbers have been presented, and today especially has been some of the most one-sided, quick games I have seen, albeit there is some nuance, a la Fnatic and Shotgun. But it's just very interesting in how quickly the game can end, with how much more powerful the Rift Herald is, with how much easier and earlier you can take those Barons. We're seeing teams use them effectively. Just all of these tools complementing one another, and also a 372 CS Rageblade 3-item Kai'Sa at 25 minutes.
I agree, and it's, you know, a lot of this game has just been us largely talking about G2 because, I mean, when we look at Splyce, they've tried to be proactive and they've tried to make plays, but a lot of it hasn't really resulted in much, and they've just been very even with G2 for the majority of the game, and that's not the situation you want to be when you are funneling all these resources into a single carry. And now with G2 in this position, they're just zoning them away, and now Splyce going for a fight.
They are. Xerxe didn't even get that Shroud of Darkness shield to bounce the grenade, throws down the Paranoia. It times out without following a dive. This Nocturne pick may as well have been an Evelynn. It's been invisible this game. Splyce are down 5,000 gold. They cannot defend their tower. It just feels like G2 have all the answers. I mean, you saw Hjärnan step up, throw down that ultimate upgrade on the on the grenade, and that was all the zoning he needed to take the final tower. So G2 played safe, maybe wait for the next Baron, and then use that to knock over the inhibitors.
I mean, it's only a matter of time now for G2. Splyce have to find some kind of TP flank, potentially with Odoamne. They did have that decent fight in the middle lane, and if they can find that, once more, then that could be a big win condition for them. Nisqy getting close to that level 16 mark, 3 points in his ultimate, which just adds that extra bit of damage and burst. But PerkZ has now picked himself up the Death's Dance. That's really going to help in terms of survivability. He has the QSS and a stopwatch on top of that. So even if Splyce kind of have the optimal setup, like it's difficult for me to say with confidence that they'll be able to win a fight.
Yeah.
So it's the setup is obviously important, but again, it's one of those situations where you're kind of looking for options for Splyce, and you're thinking, okay, how can they win this? Yes, if you can find a pick, that's probably the easiest way. What's the most realistic way? Being able to one-shot PerkZ with a good setup in terms of finding the same fight that they found earlier is really the idea. I guess Baron will be the next big way in which they can try and fight.
It just feels the case, isn't it? Like, that's going to be the final
So this is the pick we were talking about, though.
All right, let's see. Wunder got himself the Stinger, the Phage. Use that Dark Fight to try to jump away to safety. Flashes away from core of the Forge God. That's
1v2.
Decent. He's legitimately winning this fight with the Rage Blade and the Titanic. Looking to chase down. Now the teleport will complete. He has Hjärnan coming in for support. Hjärnan's got Flash available to him, but the rest of G2 eSports are now pushing up. Here goes the Braum ulti just to shut down Nisqy. PerkZ takes legitimately no damage. Dark Wind bounces back and forth as here comes the Crow Storm. There is the heal coming out from Wadid. Soraka gonna trade 1-for-1. Wunder for Odoamne. Double kill for PerkZ and turns his attention back to the inhibitor turret as Kasing and Kobbe are trying to stop the tower going down. They defend top for now, but while all that's going on, Hjärnan's joined the fray and he's shoving in the mid lane.
G2 looking good as they try to break into the base of Splyce. Their resources are being divided. Wunder did lose his life, but the 2 kills gained in their favor means that they can keep the pressure on with Baron spawning in only a few seconds.
Tower's going to fall. Inhibitor will fall immediately after. If Splyce do not find a way to interrupt, for the time being, numbers advantage actually will help out. They underestimated how much time it would take for G2 to get up there, but importantly, the base is open. Aatrox can win in a 1v2 with his kit. Now, I think a lot of credits to Wunder for just flashing away that Ornn ultimate. Definitely could have given a little bit more time to get damage down.
Not entirely sure how Wunder ended up dying off the back of that, but at the end of the day, still a lot of advantages gained for the side of G2. They'll now look to set up around the Baron. Splyce's kind of best case scenario that was, oh, maybe we can rush it, but let's have a look back at how this all happened. So they go for the dive onto Nisqy. Just nothing. He doesn't take any damage at all. Kasing with the good ultimate will come up to kind of follow in terms of the damage output. Unfortunately, they don't really have the damage because there's only 3 members versus 4. Wunder was the one soaking up a lot of it, meaning PerkZ could just sit on the backline and freely output all the DPS that he has acclimated throughout this game. He's now at 4 items, and if you thought killing him was hard before, it's only going to get harder.
30 minutes is about to click over. 428 CS for now. All of the 4-shot comes up, but look at the damage onto Nisqy already. That's decent. A couple of golden members on the side of G2, but there's nobody dead. There's not enough damage. There's not enough follow-up. PerkZ jumps in with the killer instinct, and he's already got one with the help of Wunder. That's a double kill for Wunder's Aatrox in the top lane, and it is truly a massacre of Splyce.
The Zhonyas from Hjärnan and the stopwatch from PerkZ. Both of those came together to buy enough time for G2 to reset the fight and turn it around in their favor. Splyce, they go for a last-ditch effort. It was admirable. The setup was good, but they are no longer in a position to really contest, and they lose their first inhibitor.
30 minutes on the clock. The inhibitor is broken. Baron is live. There's an exposed in the top lane, and I thought I just caught a glimpse of Odoamne. Forehead in his palms. Just looking down and on the verge of a 0-2 week for Splyce. All of that improvement and growth and development in the spring split, that is not for now.
It's interesting because a lot of what we've been speaking about this split so far has been how well teams have adapted to the meta and how like, oh, this is the meta for this team, this is the perfect. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but you can see here, Braum soaks up a lot of the damage. There's the double Zhonyas. They're both just buying time. The flash from Hjärnan gets him out of that situation as well. And then the moment PerkZ realizes, okay, Splyce are on the retreat, that's when I can look to dive in. Wunder is able to clean up a lot of the kills, but it was truly those double Zhonyas that enabled them to just buy time as Wunder was just like boink, 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 boink. And yeah.
That is insane damage. Wunder, by the way, has finished his Trinity Force in the interim. Got his hands on that Jorum's fist as well, and it's just going to get even scarier.
But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier on. Ooh, hang on, we don't have time for another fight.
We do not. Splyce have all of a sudden found opportunities to fight. Managed to take down Wunder in the mid lane as well. This will buy them plenty of time against a Baron buffed up team.
Yeah, shame on you, Wunder. You were overextended in the middle lane.
Just praising it.
Yeah, you didn't have the rest of your team applying pressure anywhere else. You were pushing a wave that also had inhibitors running, it's super minions running up it. So yeah, big mistake. Splyce do effectively punish. We'll buy them a little bit of time, as you rightly said. And he's now dead for another 30 seconds. So a lot of that Baron will be unavailable. If G2 can get this tier 3 tower in the bot lane, then they'll still overall be pretty happy, because then that's a lot of exposed inhibitors. But we'll see. Wunder's TP coming up relatively soon.
It is about 10 to 15 seconds after he spawns, is when the teleport will be up. So G2 need to bide their time for another 30 or so seconds. PerkZ goes fishing. Doesn't find anybody to jump onto with the killer instinct from Hjärnan again, using that Heimerdinger ulti
Kobbe
to try and force down the tower. That power beam from the turret chunks down Kobbe. He's forced to run for his life. Mega Inferno Bomb is available, but it won't do a lot of damage into those Baron empowered minions. Tower falls, Inhibitor's gonna go thereafter, and Splyce, they just can't get past. There's so much range and zone control between the towers, the grenades, the turrets, the Soraka. It's not done yet, and there's the teleport, Vedius.
G2 have the Nexus in their eyes. All 5 members are grouped up. They still have the Baron buff available, and they want to do this tutorial style. Splyce, ultis are coming up. Here comes the engage.
All right, Call of the Forge Guard comes out. Look at this. Xerxe is able to shut down Wadid, but it is at the cost of his own life. Now Wunder turns it back around, flashing forward. Got the Bloodwell passive to bring him back to life. PerkZ goes forward before he's scattered by the weak, but there's simply not enough damage. It was neat. A quadra kill for PerkZ to close out the game, to close out the week. And G2 eSports are destroying the Nexus, destroying Splyce. And G2 go undefeated in week 1.
This is how I like to see the funnel strat played out. You're not putting all of your eggs in a single carries basket. You're not sacrificing resources all across the map. Instead, you have side lane pressure. You enable your carry to get the farm that he needs without being over proactive, trying to force too many plays, and you put pressure on the opponents to be the ones to find that early game advantage. While we saw Splyce attempt it, they just could not find the early advantages that they wanted.
The reactive plays to Splyce was so impressive. I appreciate and respect that Splyce, they tried what they could to stop it. They did what they could to shut it down. But unfortunately, today was not their day. That means Splyce goes 0-2 on the week. A debut to Summer I wasn't quite expecting.
Well, and this is the point that we kept trying to get across before fights kept happening. I just feel that Splyce have been one of the teams that this meta doesn't suit.
Yeah.
I feel like that they do have a couple of innovators in the form of Xerxe, but a lot of these players you think are legacy players. They are used to standard League of Legends, and they have been playing like the conventional meta for a very long time. They understand good macro, they understand how to punish their opponents, but right now the game is in a state of chaos. It's all about unique picks, it's all about finding early advantages, it's all about snowballing. And for some teams, that's perfect. G2, Vitality, Misfits, all good, really early game teams. But for Splyce, it does feel like this is a style that they're not quite used to just yet.
I really like that storyline, Vedius. The idea that in this state of chaos, the younger, fresher, newer players, maybe the likes of Vitality, for example, this feels like a Vitality meta, you know, that kind of thing. Talk about that a little bit more later. For now, though, G2, they go 2-0. Extremely convincing victory yesterday. A more controlled, but still equally impressive, equally convincing win today.
Yep.
And for G2, the team that plays second in the spring split, they definitely show they're coming in pretty ready to play on this chaos patch.
Yeah,
to play on this game.
I've really enjoyed the games for our first week of the EU LCS. We've seen a lot of high action. We've seen teams being able to effectively close out the game. We haven't seen that many comebacks, which has been... It's debatable if it's disappointing. We saw the one from Fnatic earlier on in the day, but it's also that same idea that one single mistake can cost you the game.
Yes.
And I hope that teams find ways of being able to maybe stall things out.
The thing that I've loved is the diversity that we are seeing. Now, I actually think we're seeing a fair amount of AD carries. I think we're seeing a fair amount of bruisers as well as poke. I like the fact that we have now a more diverse playbook to draw from at professional play. What I would love to see in the coming weeks and coming patches is just a stabilization. Because these huge gold leads you were talking about, these huge snowball victories, I like to see that dialed back a little, but still maintain the ability to run a funnel comp, the ability to run a traditional hyper carry comp. Hell, do you know what? I'd love to see the ability to keep a kill bot lane, Vlad, Pyke, Karthus, Nunu. Give me those things, and that's what I'm hoping to see more of as summer plays out.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot more variability left to be had.
Right.
I think NALCS starts tonight, and if there's any region that's going to bring you some crazy stuff, that will definitely be one to check out
And
as
can you, do you think they're going to see crazier stuff than we've already seen?
I don't think it's going to be crazy. I just think it's going to be different.
Okay.
I think that already EU have established that Heimerdinger is kind of a favorite for us.
Fair.
We really like the
Thank
funnel
you,
strat onto Kaisar, whereas other regions have put less of a focus. They like Graves and Master Yi instead. And I just think that NA will show another flavor, a different kind of variation. It does feel like all the different regions have something that they really like, and you're just seeing some unique differences between them.
Master Yi gone unpicked and unbanned several times this week in EU. Listen, it was our final game of the week. We've narrowed it down to PerkZ, Wunder, and Hjärnan for player of the game. Hit us up at LOL Esports on Twitter for your favorite, for your player of the game. We will announce that in just a few moments. I believe we're almost ready for G2's win, and if we are, we're going to check in with Law and PerkZ.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Indeed, 2-0 for you guys this week. How do you feel about this performance?
Well, I'm pretty happy. We started practicing maybe a little bit late compared to other team standards. Like we had like 12 days of scrims or something, but we scrimmed like 10 days in a row, and we got really, really good practice, I think. We have a lot of foundations from the last split, so it was easy like to kind of build on, and I feel like we are going to be a lot stronger team this split than we were last split, and our practice has kind of like has showed more progress than we showed last split, so yeah, I expected this. How
can you explain that, the progress? Did you change something, the way you train?
I think honestly just we got all better. Like we all now know what to do, and it's also fresh start of the new split. So there is no like burnout or like bad feelings or something, you know, like usually there could be in the team. So it's just it's everything clicked now.
Going back a bit more in this game and the level 2 rotation from Splyce here, were you expecting that?
I mean, usually when we play Super Kaisa, that's our name, Super Kaisa, enemy team is always sweating to do something. So I think he just tried like a sneaky roam level 2. Maybe he thought that we wouldn't say something to our bot lane, but we did, and they didn't die, and he lost a wave or more even. I mean, it wouldn't matter too much for him because he's gonna get behind anyways because he's playing against a jungler or whatever you wanna call me, that I'm farming jungle and mid and everything. So it was kind of like a nice try, but it didn't work out this time, you know.
Yeah, it missed a bit. About this Super Xerxe thing and the composition you guys put, what was the goal with it? What were you aiming for with this composition?
Well, we're aiming to get some items on me, and then hopefully I can do damage and not die. But my team played super well, and I think it's actually more about the whole team than me, myself, because they have to play well with no jungler. Like they're playing 2 versus 3 or 1 versus 2 top, basically the whole time, unless we can move and get a kill, which we shouldn't. And yeah, my team played super well, and yeah, I just did my work of not dying.
Agreed. And now on this week, well, we saw many things already. This meta looks weird, clearly. What more can we expect from this?
I don't know. There can be a lot of stuff, like some more AP bot lanes or more bruisers, and maybe some more mid-jungle picks that I'm about to show as well. So I have stuff prepared up my sleeve. So this is not the only thing.
Okay, well, let's keep that for later. I want to know, when the patch came out, were you expecting things to go that crazy?
Honestly, at first, I was like kind of pissed about the patch because like you're a pro player, and the game is such a huge change, and it's like when you do another sport or whatever, business or something, this doesn't happen, right? So you have to like be really good at adapting. Like hopefully not all players are, right? So some teams or some players might struggle more, but I realize that it's my job and I enjoy it, and I'm also like creating myself. So I started to love it, actually. After like 2 days, I started to just fully enjoy the patch and not be stressed at all. And yeah, it's a lot of fun for me.
Well, since you like it, how do you guys approach things during trainings? How do you work on the patch? Like, you don't try randomly things, I expect, but how do you do it?
Well, we try to make less macro mistakes, less getting caught. Like the worst deaths in scrims are like when you get caught, when you know that someone is coming. And we are trying to avoid that, mostly. And we are theory crafting a lot, like we are talking about the champions we can play or the strategies we can pull off. And yeah, this new meta, whatever you want to call it, maybe like brought us to talk more about the game. So honestly, yeah, it's just good practice and good teamwork right now.
You say whatever you want to call it, and I feel like when I talked to Hans and Jankos yesterday, they basically say the same thing. People tend to say like there's not really a meta anymore. Do you agree?
Yeah, you can pretty much play anything that you're good at. Yeah, you can play standard, you can play bruises, you can play APs, you can play Super Xerxe. So yeah, I'm gonna be looking to play a lot more Super Xerxe.
On another note, I want to talk about the end of Spring Split and the fact that you were defeated by Fnatic. How did you get away from that?
When I first realized that we lost, I was really crushed. I was really like, I realized that I had burned out like already a couple of weeks before the finals, and I didn't give my best or play my best that I could, maybe. So I took it very like personal and individual performance that I have to play better myself next split. So I worked hard on myself in all season on my individual skill and being able to perform like as good as I can, which is like I aim for perfection. So it was kind of an eye-opener and motivation boost, because now like more than ever I really want to like take the trophy again.
Well, you're on a good path to do so for the moment. Thank you very much for joining me today, and well, good luck on week 2. Now let's wrap up week 1, and for that I'm gonna send it over to Xerxe and the guys for the EU LCS post-game lobby. Take it away.